And welcome back. Well, the Fire Officers Association joins the list of unions to sign off on the 4% offered by the Chief Personnel Officer after months of rejecting it. Today, we are joined by the association president, Leo Ramkissoon, to discuss what led to the change of heart, as it were. Mr. Ramkissoon, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Ramkissoon, unions in the past have vehemently fought this 4%. What has brought about your association's acceptance of it?
Well, as you know, we were subject to the trial process at the special tribunal. And in that process, the special tribunal made a preliminary judgment that any ruling that they would render would be binding on all the parties for a period of 10 years. And that, of course, would have led to deliberations by our membership, given that it would encroach upon the two periods that are immediately proceeding from the two periods that are in question at the CPO. So the periods that are in question around the table was the 14 up to 19. So the 10 years would have taken us well way up into 2023, and in some cases 2024. So that would encroach upon the following two periods and would take away our opportunity to negotiate for those periods. So the membership quite unhappily decided to take it. It was quite a really split down the middle kind of a decision. A lot of the members were mindful to stay the course and even accept nothing, just to make the point that basically 4% increase over 10 years would be really unfair, and to have that imposed on officers, they only accepted because they felt in these circumstances it was the only option they had that was reasonable.
So it's a situation to accept it now, but you fight for another day for the upcoming negotiations.
Yeah. I think that the views of the members, the just over 50% of officers who did vote to accept, I think what their views was that whilst some may view staying in the court and fighting it there as the only form of fighting, and coming out was a form of giving up, they viewed it as coming out of the court as fighting on their turf, fighting in a place where they feel they could get fairness, and that's in the court of public opinion. So rest assured, those officers are by no means giving up the fight. What they are actually doing is preparing to fight even harder for the ensuing period. That's the period from 2020 onwards. So we as we said to the CPO, 1 for the state, 0 for fire service at this time. But the war is not over in terms of, and I use the word war figuratively in terms of the negotiation process, but the war is not over in terms of this battle for peace, bread, and justice. It's just a fair living wage is what we're looking for.
What have fire officers received in this 4%?
Well, what we received, aside from the 4%, we received some increase in some of the allowances at a percentage of about 5 to 6%, which is, in respect of allowances, is meager. If you have an allowance for, let's say, $200, it would have gone up to $205 and so on, and $210 and so on. And we got a few new allowances that represents competencies that fire officers have now developed and are even performing on a frequent basis. That is, for example, land search and rescue operations, information technology allowances, and other similar allowances that represent what officers are now doing on a daily basis, which is a little beyond what is required in the established job descriptions. Aside from that, we got an undertaking to initiate a job evaluation process, which we hope will cure this problem in terms of the late start to negotiations outside of the period. We hope to bring negotiations up to current. We got as well the commitment to initiate a group health plan, because as you know, Marlon, we have been making the point over and over that the World Health Organization has declared the profession of firefighting to be carcinogenic, meaning that we will be much more likely, 3 to 4 times more likely to develop cancers and so on. And more than any other area, we believe fire officers should have a comprehensive health plan, and that we don't have at this time. So we are hopeful that that will materialize. Aside from that, we had some commitments for pension reform, and so those are things that we move forward. It's not a binding agreement, but we have at least in writing a memorandum of understanding agreeing to pursue those items as prioritized going forward.
Mr. Ramkissoon, how has this news been received by your other colleagues in the trade union movement? Because I remember initially when unions began accepting the 4%, certain union leaders were described as selling out. How has this news been received since it was announced that you all had accepted the 4%?
Well, I wouldn't want to speak beyond my own remit in terms of how other unions would respond to it. I would leave that for them, but I would have you know that we did, before even accepting, we did do the honorable thing by informing our sister unions out there and ensuring that at least those whom we affiliate with under the joint trade union movement were made aware of our membership's decisions. And you know, even those who went before, who signed before, those at the very onset, they may have had some bearing in terms of the direction, because once, you know, more and more unions accept, it places it increasing pressure in terms of the others to accept, because it is sometimes more likely that those decision makers will be more empowered and they will have a greater tendency to go with what is the wider accepted percentage. So that is the case. I will allow for the other unions to make their say. And Marlon, I would say the time that those unions will have their say would be on June the 19th this year, when we have our Labor Day celebrations. We in the fire service not calling it celebrations too much. Officers more calling it, you know, our Labor Day statements. We want to have our say that day, and I'm certain all the other unions will be looking forward to having their say on these matters during that Labor Day celebrations in Faizabad. So
you all are expected to return to Faizabad for Labor Day this year in your thousands, as you usually do.
Yes. Our workers. I believe that a large volume of workers, a large cross-section of workers, including fire officers, are looking forward to having our say in terms of this matter especially, and other matters. But I think aside from that, we as the union leaders will be calling on our members more than ever. More than ever, now is the time that we need to speak up, stand up and speak up for peace, bread and justice in this country.
What are some of the pressing matters for fire officers at this time, Mr. Ramkissoon?
Well, Marlon, as you know, aside from this matter of salary negotiations, the issue in terms of health and safety, and that is in the terms of the conditions of fire stations. We continue to have stations that are, you know, well below standards. In fact, some stations are shut down and are unable to be inhabited. We have an issue with trucks, defective trucks. Officers are operating trucks that are very, very, you know, it is barely roadworthy. And there are some stations without trucks whatsoever. And of course, that places much more strain on officers from nearby stations to respond. And of course, probably most importantly, the lack of breeding apparatus sets. That matter has still not been resolved. Those issues and the fire suits and decontamination of suits and all of these things. So it's really a health and safety concern, given that the fire officers have that greater propensity, as it is declared by the World Health Organization, that firefighters have that greater propensity to develop long-term illnesses based on, prolonged exposure to carcinogens and other toxins and so on involved in firefighting.
Leo Ramkissoon, It was a pleasure speaking with you this morning, sir.
The only other thing before I go is that matter of promotions that has not been resolved as yet. We hope to see that happens. At least that may bring some resolve, as officers have been qualified for many, many years, since 2016, and we have not seen any promotions in the lowest ranks in the service, in the rank of fire sub-officer in particular. We hope to see some movement in terms of those promotions coming up. So that is a matter for the Public Service Commission to resolve quickly.
All right, again, thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. Okay?
Thanks for having me, Marlon.
Yeah, anytime, sir. We are going to a very short break with this traffic update from the Beetham.
Please don't tell me that you're love. I'm sorry, because love don't love anybody. Everyone keeps cutting each other's throats. In this concrete jungle we live in, the episode is Murder, She Wrote.